All right, we're on schedule. We have the last item on the agenda today is the criteria for adding and naming WSBA Apex Awards, and we have Russell and Sarah have strategically placed themselves together around the table, so you can sit right there and address this issue. Thanks. All right.
Thanks, Bill. So this was on for first reading last meeting and is on for action today. There are three items. One is adopting a criteria for renaming Apex Awards or naming them for the first time. The second is adopting a criteria for adding or retiring Apex Award categories. And the third is a proposal to rename our highest award, the Award of Merit, after Chief Justice Fairhurst. Or, if more appropriate, find another way to recognize Chief Justice Fairhurst at the Apex Awards. A little bit of background. A couple of years ago, a number of governors started to express some concerns about the process of how we named Apex Awards. Some are named after an individual, some are not named after an individual. We didn't have any real set of criteria over how that happened. Staff put together a set of criteria for both naming awards and for adding and retiring award criteria. We put that in front of the board last meeting and got feedback. That feedback was very helpful. Some of the feedback was, this is too strict. It shouldn't be all of these criteria are required. In other words, you shouldn't have to meet every single one of these elements. It should be expressed as should instead of shall. And so we've made that change. Another comment, which was, I think, well taken, is we should be very cautious about naming an award after an individual. The award category itself is what we're recognizing, and we should reserve naming an award after an individual for really exceptional circumstances. And we've put that into the criteria as well, that in general, there's a preference to not name an award, but in an exceptional case, an award may be named after an individual. I think taking that feedback in, we've developed a set of criteria that is more flexible and that allows governors a greater degree of leeway in naming awards, but it also allows for a degree of continuity in Apex Awards. It recognizes that this is our most important awards that we give out and the importance of having consistency. Of course, the members of the Apex Award Committee are going to change every year. The Board of Governors is going to change over time. But what we want to do is sort of elevate this highest recognition above any individual governor or board and have a consistent policy on how these are named. So the proposals begin at page 117 of the materials if you want to jump to it on the computer. And my recommendation would be to first entertain a motion to adopt the revised proposals, and then after, if something is adopted, to then entertain a discussion about renaming the Award of Merit or recognizing Chief Justice Fairhurst in another way. We can certainly do it in another order, but I think it would procedurally be best to set the standards first and then apply them.
That sounds actually a great way to do it. Perfect. All right. PJ.
I move we adopt the proposed standards as revised.
All right. We've got a motion to adopt the proposed standards as revised. Is there a second? Sunitha. The second from Sunitha. All right. Any discussion on this motion, Dan? B.
I move to amend to strike the criteria of deceased.
Okay. Second. There's a motion to amend to strike the criteria of deceased. That's been seconded. Any discussion on the amendment?
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Well, so a little discussion on it.
Let's have some discussion on striking that. Yes.
So
just on the amendment.
Because it's been changed from a shall requirement to a should requirement, it is possible to rename the award, to name an award after a living person.
Okay.
I think, in general, naming an award after the totality of someone's life is appropriate, because then you have a complete picture of who that person is and what the achievements that they've had. I recognize that for our very next discussion, naming the award after Chief Justice Fairhurst is going to be absolutely appropriate. It would be appropriate under our current guidelines, but I think, in general, doing this level of honor is a level of honor I think that should be, in general, reserved for after someone has passed away.
Dan?
I don't disagree with that, but it's kind of a good example of how the exception proves the rule. I mean, if the very first person you want to name an award of is still alive, well, then maybe having deceased as a criteria is not the best idea. Or at the very least, you can massage this, because when you say should, while that may not be a word of command, it's pretty darn close. I mean, something's got to give there, I feel. But just my opinion.
So approximately half the awards are already named after individuals. This isn't the first one that's going to be named after an individual. All of them are named after individuals who have passed away. This is not the first one we want to name after someone. I think the history here is the Excellence in Diversity Award was renamed the Justice C.Z. Smith Excellence in Diversity Award 2 years ago, and I think began a discussion about how are we naming these awards, and so I think if we water down the criteria, then it's kind of like we don't have any criteria at all. My preference would be to keep it in as a suggested element, but I also recognize what you're saying. Maybe should is too strong of a word. Maybe there's something else that could be put there. Considered, sure. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Gene?
I have a question, just because I just want a little more clarification. What do you mean by the second criteria being non-divisive, specifically? Like, what were you guys thinking?
I'm going to punt to Sarah.
I don't think there is a definition of non-divisive, but I think in general what that goes along with is kind of this idea down below where you outreach to a lot of different stakeholders to make sure that the meaning and the legacy that this person has for one group is the same for another group, right? And so I guess by non-divisive, I guess what I mean is a pretty uniformly and generally accepted legacy of what this person meant to many different groups, right? I can think, I'm trying to think of a pretty concrete example. Columbus Day, right? I don't think that was thoroughly vetted among many stakeholders to make sure that was non-divisive. A person who meant something great, not so great to another group in history. And so I maybe there's a better way to say it. I don't think there's it's a very concrete standard. It just generally means that the legacy is viewed uniformly and accepted amongst many different factions of the legal community.
So can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Of course.
So then how do you determine that?
I think it's down here when it says, sorry. I think it's in kind of the procedural element where you do a lot of outreach. For instance, when the C.Z. Smith Award came to us, it was done after a lot of outreach, right? Kind of the well-known stakeholder group for diversity came to us and said, I think that this is a very good candidate, for the sum total of his work. I would just say that in the procedures, I would match non-divisive with doing some homework and making sure that that is a widely held view amongst the legal community.
The other thing I would add, which I think anyone, who is, and a legal giant is another criteria, anyone who has really made an impact or done something big is going to have made some enemies along the way. So I don't think it should be read to mean have never, taken a stance that was controversial. In fact, perhaps you have to have taken a stance that was controversial at the time to really become a legal giant. And one of the reasons that I prefer this as sort of a look back in naming an award is you get a better sense of whether that person was a visionary at their time looking back. So I mean, non-divisive is a vague term, and I don't think it should be read to mean never done anything controversial. And maybe there's a better way to say it.
Yeah, I think divisive means there's not going to be a faction of the legal community that stands up and says, I really feel like this entity, this award, does not mean to me, right? I see it in a completely different viewpoint. So I don't know if I'm articulating that well. Just uniformity of vision around the legacy. And I did want to also point out that in terms of a should, I know it sounds odd to be talking about a very present example of what we're possibly going to name an award along with the criteria, but having, again, done school namings and a lot of different types of namings, I do think it is generally considered the very best practice to wait until a person is deceased. And I don't mean that for the consideration we're going to bring up, but you do not know what the sum total of the legacy or the historic perspective or even what that person has left in them in the next five. I don't know. And so I think maybe it's hard to do both at the same time, but I hope that you would consider that as an important standpoint when you're looking at naming this award in the next conversation. So I don't know how you want to. I wouldn't necessarily say letting our consideration of the naming for Mary Fairhurst weigh on best practices. And maybe when you're looking at best practices, if you do think that's a best practice, should be a consideration in the next conversation, which is why we also have alternative ideas about how we could certainly recognize Mary Fairhurst right now.
Anything else, Jean?
No, thank you.
All right. I read the same thing, and I thought after I read that criteria being non-divisive, that meant we were never going to name a award after a lawyer again. we were going to do doctors or something, because I was like, well, that's what we do. Anyway, okay, so we've got Chris, and then we got Alec, and this is we can try to channel in on Dan's amendment.
Thanks. I'm speaking to Dan's amendment. I'd like to amend Dan's amendment to strike both be deceased and be non-divisive.
Okay.
And the reason is that I think the last three bullet points are very aspirational and positive, and the first two are very blunt and negative. And so, we can have a conversation when a particular name arises about whether they're too divisive or too alive or too young or, they have more of their career ahead of them or whatever. We can have that conversation, but I just don't think it should be encapsulated here. So I'd move to amend Dan's amendment to strike the first two bullets.
You okay with that, Dan? Yes. Does you accept that as a friendly amendment? All right, and then the seconds, whoever that, accept that as a friendly amendment.
Would it make sense to just vote on those individually?
No, let's just put them together here.
Do you think they're the same?
Let's put them together. I think it's all similar.
All right.
Okay, so you're agreeing, Sunitha, to do that. Okay, so the amendment right now is to strike the language about being non-divisive and being deceased. I was going to say dead, but deceased is a better word. All right, any discussion on that amendment? No. All right, we're going to go around this direction. Yes, Alec? Yes. You had a question or a comment. Sorry, I missed you.
No, but this is but in support of what Chris and Dan have done. One, I was almost saying, I think we're doing this backwards, because my problem was if we do this and this is in here, I don't care what you tell me. When we then take up the question about Justice Fairhurst, I'm sorry, you're going to now use that as a reason not to do that. That's a problem. But then I looked at the other one and I said, well, actually it should be held in high esteem. Why are we doing a negative? But actually that bullet talking about the giant and talking about how far and wide gets to that point. So, you don't have to have the negative as your leads. And so I agree to strike those two.
All right. I'm looking right. Doug.
I think the board is making a mistake by taking out the criteria for being deceased. And I'm not trying to change your mind. You'll do what you want to do, and that's fine. But in my experience, judging a legacy before it's over leads to error, because sometimes legacies become tarnished in unexpected and awkward ways. And the board may someday find itself in a situation where it's made a decision on naming an award for a living individual, and it turned out to be a mistake, and that's going to be unfortunate when that has to be revoked. But again, it's fine. I'll be satisfied with saying I told you so 20 years down the road. And one more point, a quick point. I really like the legal giant concept. We don't need to wordsmith this policy now, but just as a guideline, I almost wish it said a legal giant whose legacy will live on in the minds of the profession in perpetuity or near perpetuity. Because while many of the named awards meet that criteria, certainly Charles Smith and Norm Mailing, those names will live on. But Angelo Petras, I challenge anyone here, with the possible exception of Jim McPherson, to tell me. Okay, and we don't have to do that now, but just a way of thinking about legal giantism.
Great. All right. So, can I see hands on this side real quick? You want to jump queue? Yep, quickly.
Oh, well, just because I think the amendment has shifted, I would support an amendment to strike the non-divisive criteria. I think after this discussion, I can understand how that's a confusing term. I still think, as a suggested criteria, we should keep the criteria of deceased.
All right. So, hands over here, the folks that wanted to add to this. We've got Kyle. Kim, you had your hand up or not? Yeah. Okay. Hold your thoughts here, because I want James to come up. He gave me a short signal that he's got a short comment.
The one thing that people haven't talked about is think of the person who you are naming an award after, because maybe they will think that, look, you must think I'm almost dead. And I don't mean to be rude, but that fits with Marion. She is my president. That's what I call her every time I see her, because the first board meeting that I came to all the time, she was president. And I hug her and kiss her on the cheek every single time I see her, because she's my president. And I would not want to hurt Mary. And I would be concerned if you named an award after her when she's in her current state. And I kind of agree with Doug. I think you should leave him in. I like the fact that it was should, but I'm not voting. And I feel the momentum here, and I'll be with Doug when it's I told you so.
All right, on this side, Rajiv, and then down to Kyle, and maybe Kim.
Thanks. I just think what Doug is saying is really important, especially for me about the deceased thing. We're naming someone after a lifetime of achievement. You can't judge a lifetime until that lifetime is over, in my opinion. And people do strange things as their lives and careers go on, and times change, and things that we think are acceptable now in this century, people in the past who have been giants of law have done repugnant and repulsive things later on in their lives or throughout their lives, or things that were culturally appropriate at that time. And I just think that it becomes political, becomes charged. It sends subtext messages that we're not aware of, or like Jim said, we can be conveying to people, we really want to honor you while you're still living. We just don't think you're going to make it. And I just think what Doug is saying much more articulately than me is this is serious stuff, and I think we should judge lifetimes, and I don't think we should remove the deceased criteria in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
I appreciate what Doug's saying as well. I do think that I prefer the flexibility so that you can focus on the person and then you can make those decisions. And I agree also that should or shall, I think it's a little too subtle. I'm in favor of removing both bullet points because, things can be found out about folks years after they've passed away. We don't eliminate that possibility just because they've just died. And I do sympathize that maybe some folks would view themselves being honored with the naming of an award as forecasting their, demise, I guess. But the other hand, many folks would find that an honor. And so I'm in favor of just keeping the flexibility, the few bullet points that we absolutely have to have, and then leave it to the folks who, future board members, future folks who are naming these awards, to consider all of these different thoughts, because they're going to. And I leave it to them and give them the flexibility to do so.
Thanks, Kyle. We're over to, I think, Jeannie.
So I'm going to add on to what Doug said. I'm one of these people, I don't like awards that are named after people. I like them that are named for the criteria. Award of merit. For many of the reasons Doug said, because people do change. And piggybacking on what Jim said, I don't think there's a finer person I've met, or at least there are very few, than Mary Fairhurst. She's just outstanding. But how awkward is this? With all the issues the bar is facing that are going to be going directly to the Supreme Court for a decision, and now you've named an award after the Chief Justice that's going to be making those decisions? I mean, that just seems really awkward to me. And we're always talking about appearance of fairness and stuff. I wonder if it would be awkward for her. So when you want to honor somebody, you give them an award. You make an exception. You do something special for them. You don't have to name it after them. When you have the clown and the pain in the butt that comes to board meetings, you can name it the Gene Cotton Award. But please don't. You can just give me the award, okay?
How's your health?
I don't know. I know how quickly people die unexpectedly. So, my thought is, please honor her by not doing this, but by giving her something that she can cherish while she's alive.
Good points. All right, I'm looking on this side of the table. Okay, and Sarah.
This might be spoiling some of the surprise, but piggybacking off of what we just heard, I think what one recommendation we had is we already passed a really nice resolution to honor Mary, and one of the thoughts that we had is we would frame that and make a special presentation during Apex. And so, we're not oblivious to the idea of honoring someone who's done outstanding work, but we're also considering other ways, if that helps to feel like you have another option to think about. It's not the only way we could potentially honor Mary.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Okay, so we have an amendment to vote on first, and it's a consolidated amendment striking the language of deceased and also striking the language of non-divisive.
Bill, you don't think we could vote on those separately?
Well,
our Robert's rules.
You don't have to move to separate. I'll look around the board table, and if you want to do them separately, we'll do them separately. Anybody? Is that what you want to do? Nod your heads if it is. All right. And yes. Kyle, you're outnumbered. I counted the beds. Okay, we're going to do them separately. All right, we're going to start with the deceased language first. We're going to do that one first. The motion to strike that out, Dan? Aye? Aye. Nay.
Nay.
What?
Nay.
We've got two nays. Kyle?
Aye.
Aye. Kim.
I'll abstain.
Kim abstains. Carla.
Nay.
Nay. Paul.
Nay.
Nay. Aye from Sunitha. PJ. Nay. Nay from PJ.
Nay.
Jean is a nay.
Aye.
Aye from Dan.
Aye.
Aye from Dan. What do we land on? And who do we have on the phone?
Brian Tolson?
Brian, you on the phone? Okay. All right. So we don't have anybody. I want to make sure if he's on the phone, he gets to vote. Nobody's on the phone. All right. So what's the vote?
6 yeas, 6 nays, and 1 abstention.
All right. And a yay vote is to strike the deceased language. Okay. I vote nay. We keep the deceased language. All right. Next one. This is on the divisiveness issue. Dan's an aye.
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 I'm with Jean Cotton. I don't like words that are named after people, so I'm going to abstain again.
Thanks, Kim.
I'm sorry, but just to be clear, so the vote is, do we want to keep the divisiveness language?
Strike the language.
Strike the divisiveness language. Then I will say nay.
Okay. Paul?
Nay.
Aye.
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 All right. And checking on the phone again. No one on the phone. What are our vote totals?
10 yeas, 2 nays, and 1 abstention.
Okay, 10 yeas, 2 nays, 1 abstention. So the language on divisiveness is stricken. All right, so now we're back to the original motion, Chris.
Motion to amend to move be deceased to the bottom of the bullets rather than to be the lead-off entry.
Okay. There's a motion to move the deceased criteria to the bottom of the list. It's a shift. Is there a second on that? Do we have
I would
to have
accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, do you have to vote? You could just do it.
Let's just do it quick here.
Listen, Chris,
So
come on.
There's
We'll just do that.
Just for Margaret. Margaret, there's a motion and there is a second, and the second was from who?
First of all, I completely disagree that the order of required elements suggests importance of the elements. In any cause of action, when there's certain elements and you have to meet all of them, it's not like you have to meet the first one more. But in this case, let's just move it. This is the easy solution.
All right, so I'm going to look around. I'm going to look around the room. Is everybody in agreement to just move it in terms of the order? Heads are nodding yes. Heads are nodding yes. So we don't need a motion on that. That's just going to be moved. Thank you. All right. So now we're back to PJ's original motion to pass to approve the language, the criteria as amended, and we've already got a second. Is everybody ready to vote on that? I'm looking around, and everybody's nodding yes. All right, start with you, Dan. Aye. Dan's an aye.
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 Abstaining.
Nay.
Aye.
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 All right, checking on the phone one more time just to be sure. Anybody on the phone? Brian, it would be you. No Brian. Our vote totals?
11 yeas, 1 nay, and 1 abstention.
All right, 11 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention. Motion to approve the language on the criteria is approved.
5-minute warning.
That is the language. We have almost 5 to 6 minutes here left on our agenda. Next item.
So Dan Clark has, I think maybe it would be best if you took the lead on this, has submitted materials asking the board to rename our highest award, the Award of Merit, after Chief Justice Mary Fairhurst. Dan's materials are well written, and he provides a very persuasive reasoning for it, and they're at 120 in the materials, but if there's anything else you'd like to add.
I think you've made Dan asked me to make the motion, but I think, Russell, you've made it, and I would second Dan's motion to name the award after Chief Justice.
And it's the Award of Merit, right? Yes. All right, so we're voting on renaming the Award of Merit to the Mary Fairhurst Award of Merit, Ethan. And then I'm going to go this way. There was a motion and a second. It's okay, so go Ethan, PJ, and Alec.
I guess I just have a process question. When we named an award last time, did a committee make a recommendation and the board ratified it, or how is this coming to the board?
Anybody have an answer on that?
Last time the committee recommended not naming it, and then people brought it to the board, and then the board named it anyways.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I guess the short answer is it ultimately lands in the board's lap and they vote. Yeah. All right. Who was next? PJ.
I tend to agree with the remarks that were made to the effect that how's the chief going to feel about this, and we're going to have some stuff coming before her that's very important, and therefore is now the time to do this. Just by way of context, she got an award, I think, this week at the Ninth Circuit a deal in Spokane, and although it's not public yet, she's going to get another award from the Legal Foundation at their annual deal. So don't repeat that. But I want to give you some. There's. You're being a bad boy again.
At Swagle's house.
So there's all sorts of stuff already going on, and maybe now is not the time to do this for us. I'm just not sure.
Okay. Good points. Next. Alec Russell. And then Gene. So Alec, Russell, Gene.
Yeah, so I just
And
want
Paul.
I just want to get some clarification, which is this a motion just for the action? Because I see your materials, but there are things in your materials that I would have a hard time forwarding that on for the record. And I'm especially talking about your recitation of the criteria, because that does then point up, in your recitation of the criteria, you start with the person must be deceased. So, I'd just like to, yep.
I think what's on for action is what's in the memo, which is honor Chief Justice Mary Fairhurst by renaming the Award of Merit or other public recognition as the Board of Governors deems appropriate. And I would add that perhaps, the discussion right now could involve more than just the Award of Merit. I think no one in this room would sort of oppose naming the Award of Merit after Chief Justice Fairhurst. In principle, the question is it appropriate to do that right now? And the other sort of nuanced question is there a more appropriate way to recognize and honor her now? And the answer, I guess that's a question for the board to answer.
All right, so we've got Gene, Paul, and Ethan, and we have got 120 seconds left. So go ahead, Gene.
When I first read this, I was like, that's a great idea. I have so much respect for Justice Fairhurst, but when I heard the comments made by Gene Cotton and what PJ just said, and what Russell just said, I really do think it's about timing. And I can't help but think, I don't think this is the right time. So that's just kind of where I stand. Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. Paul? Paul Sweigel.
Thank you. I guess one point of clarification, and it's probably embarrassing, but didn't we just say we're not going to strike the deceased requirement?
This will be the only time in history that you do it. This will be it.
So this is an exception to the rule we just decided not to change.
Yep.
Shall, should? It says should. What?
It does not a requirement. It says should instead of shall.
Yeah. In the future, they'll read that as shall, Paul, but that's okay. We're moving on.
Or should'll. I think. I guess what I would like to see is have the motion withdrawn. I think it's a little awkward from just multiple angles. We hold this vote and we approve it, it's a little awkward for the reasons that have been shared. We vote for this and we don't approve it, it's awkward for even more reasons.
Thanks, Paul. Ethan?
And
then we're gonna move.
I think it's for that reason I'm renewing my suggestion that it goes to the committee. If the committee rejects it, then it can be brought to the board. But it's unripe for determination at this juncture. The committee should decide, and it should come back.
All right, PJ, and then Kim.
Sarah, what was the alternative that you were talking about a few minutes ago?
So the board in January passed a very lovely March, passed a really nicely worded resolution to honor Justice Fairhurst. And one thing that we considered was framing that and having a presentation to her at the Apex dinner.
Then I move to amend the pending motion to frame and present the award at the Apex dinner with appropriate presentation language at that time by the presiding officer.
Okay.
Second the amendment.
All right, second. Do we have any discussion because we're a minute over? No, Dan?
So I've got to say 2 years here, and this is the most disappointing discussion I have been, in and with. I can't believe we're, the will of the board is the will of the board. I was told by the former ED in March when we passed that she would give that to her. That didn't happen. I want that on the record. So I would really think that after all the stuff that we have had this year happen, that we have a chance to do something that to me is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do now. And I am respectfully asking each of you to cast your vote for this and to rename the award for her right now. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
The way where I'm coming from in this discussion is similar to what Gene Cotton has said. I equate it with when I'm in front of a judge on a regular basis and I meet them at lunch or something. I'm not allowed to give them even a Christmas card because of the appearance of unfairness. It's just not a good idea to give someone that you're going to be coming in front of on a judicial basis a gift or whatever. I think in this instance, because of the things that are pending and the things that the Supreme Court has to decide, I'm sorry, but I have to agree that I don't think that timing now is appropriate to make this named after her.
Okay, so PJ, you got a quick comment there?
I'm curious whether Chris wants to say anything about this. She's got more relationship here than anybody else. And if she doesn't want to, that's fine too.
I did just spend the week with her, but I always say to people, don't presume that Mary Fairhurst's circle is small. It's huge. And I'm fortunate to be part of a very large circle that participated in the civility seminar in Italy with her last year and that spent the week in Cooperstown with her as sort of a honor Edgar and have a civility reunion. So she has a very large circle of friends and admirers, and I count myself fortunate to be among them, but I have no particular inside track to the chief, and I would not presume that to say or to intimate in any way that I did. So I know that she's very honored by the Ninth Circuit Award. She's very excited about traveling to different places to accept these awards. She spoke of those experiences in the past week, and she was looking forward to it. So I didn't sense from her a reluctance or embarrassment or dismissal of any awards that she's receiving. So, in terms of timing, I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna. I mean, there's no right timing, because if your concern is that you're going to have cases that show up in front of the court, well, that's going to happen as long as she's alive and serving on the court. And maybe that's what you're alluding to when you talk about the timing is wrong. I don't know. But it's not like 6 months from now there's not going to be a case involving the Bar Association in front of the court. That's just never going to happen. So, sorry, I rambled.
No, you didn't. You did. Thank you. All right, Alec.
So I have at least a conundrum with the conversation about the alternative award. I mean, if I heard you right, Kim, then doing anything would be a problem. Giving her any kind of award at this time would be a problem. I kind of see this differently. I see this as actually, well, I talked about having their roses when you can smell them. Well, I want you all to know there was an actual nomination for her to get the award of merit. This again, and we said, well, no, she's already gotten that. But then the thought became, she's already gotten that. But she could be the named person for the award and give the award. That's my idea of you get your roses when you can smell them. And so there's something I think about honoring that somebody, and they are aware that you are giving them that honor. So I'm going to join you in that vote, however it turns out.
All right, what's the motion? There was an amendment here.
Yeah, I moved to amend the pending motion to adopt the approach that Sarah articulated, where we would present the framed resolution with appropriate words from the presiding officer at the Apex Award, and do that for now, rather than the alternative.
Okay, and that was the amendment. And then, Dan, your position is no. You want this award named for her, period. Okay. So we need to vote on the amendment first. We're going to do that now. Dan? Aye.
You are the only participant in the conference. Please press any key on your keypad to remain in the conference.
I voted nay.
Alec is a nay. All right, hold on. Do we have to get people? All right. Dan B is a yes. And Alec was a
no.
No. Ethan?
I'm going to continue to vote no on all of these because I think the committee needs to come with a recommendation and they can consider all the things that were discussed today. I just think that this is not the proper venue to bring an original motion.
Okay. Russell? Russell's an aye.
No.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Where's Paul? He's gone. He's missing the vote. Okay, Sunita?
Aye.
No.
No.
Okay. What's our vote total?
7 to 5.
7 to 5.
7 yes.
7 yes, 5 no. Were there any abstentions? No abstentions. So PJ's motion to amend passes. Does that then moot the original motion, I believe? Yes. All right. So that's what we do. All right? All right. Russell.
We should vote on the underlying motion.
Okay. And the underlying motion again is?
It's now been changed. It's to present Chief Justice Fairhurst with the resolution honoring her
Apex gotcha. Okay.
Awards.
All right. All right. Thank you. Yes. That's you restate the motion, Russell, because you lost me there. Yeah.
PJ, can you restate your motion?
Okay. PJ.
The motion is to present the framed resolution that we previously passed to the Chief Justice at the Apex Award dinner.
Yep.
With appropriate remarks by the presiding officer.
Okay, perfect. All right, Dan.
Well, because I like to do something as opposed to nothing, I vote aye.
Okay.
I'm voting no for the reasons stated earlier.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
And Paul is missing.
Aye.
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 All right, I know the ayes have it. What's the vote total?
10 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstention.
All right, 10 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstention. Motion passes. I believe, unless there's any other remarks that anybody has, they're just dying to make before we adjourn.
Yes, sir.
Oh boy. Okay, Alec,
No.
and then Rajiv.
Okay. So because I think, well, I want to make an apology to Governor Higginson and Governor Hunter in my characterization of your discussion regarding Robert's rules. And I still want to have that conversation, but I realize that my either weird humor or analogy was over the top. It wasn't to personally offend you. It was to oppose you. But we can have that conversation. But I do apologize.
I accept your apology, and thank you very much, Governor Stevens, for that.
I as well, Governor Stevens, thank you.
All right, thanks, Alec. And Rajiv, you had a comment?
Yeah, just to let everyone know who's interested, at 5 o'clock I called into the nominations committee line and did my OPA announcement delaying that meeting to 5:15. Paul's actually in that meeting, and that meeting is due to start at 5:15. Those of you in nominations committee, please do not run out the door quickly. Thank you.
Okay, so remember, 6 p.m. tonight, we have a dinner with the Washington Young Lawyers Committee. That starts at 6 p.m., and then we'll have a breakfast with the Washington Leadership Institute at 8 a.m. Those are the final announcements. The dinner is at your favorite restaurant, Lulu's. And the breakfast is at Anthony's, your second favorite restaurant. With that...
And Bill, I really encourage all the governors to go to both of those, the dinner and the breakfast. These are both groups that are up-and-coming lawyers that will likely be on the Board of Governors in their future. They are doing a lot of the good work that is necessary here, and opportunities for this board to interact informally. It's not a meeting, I understand that, but to interact with both of these groups is an important thing.
And with that being said, our interim executive director will drop the gavel at her discretion. She dropped the gavel. Reminder, there you go. Reminder to the governors, this is not a meeting. These dinners are not to be discussing business. These are just outreaches of friendship and cordial discussion. Thank you. Good job.
And if everyone who's not on nominations could actually vacate the room, we need to have an executive session. So thank you.